Hi there. So, have you ever wondered what kind of mood you're in? Happy, sad, excited, angry? Today we'll be studying about a slightly different type of mood. Now, when we talk about mood in English, it means something with regard to the property of a verb. Now, if you've ever thought about it, verbs can be used in many different ways. For instance, they could be used to state a fact. Imagine I say, Ram sits here. So this is a fact. So sits is expressing that he is sitting, right? It can also be used to express an order or a command like go there. So go is also a verb. Verbs can also be used to ask questions. Where does she stay? So here does is also a verb. Now verbs can have all these different manners in which they can express something. These different manners in which verbs can be used to express things are known as the moods of the verb. So moods are basically ways in which we can use verbs in order to show what the writer's attitude is towards what he or she is saying. Now let's take a look at the types of mood that we have in English. There are basically three kinds of moods. Number one, indicative moods. Number two, imperative moods. And number three, subjunctive moods. Now let's take a look at them one by one. Now in the first type that you have, which is called the indicative mood, we can use this mood of the verb to state a fact. So let's look at an example. Let's say, Sam eats rice. So here we're stating a fact, simply giving the information. So here eats is said to be in the indicative mood. We can also use indicative moods to ask a question. So we can say, does Sam eat rice? So here we are using does, which is also a verb, and eat, which is also a verb, in order to ask a question. Now, sometimes we can split the indicative mood into a smaller part known as an interrogative mood, and these would only include the verbs which are asking a question. So this sentence here could be said to be in the interrogative mood as well as the indicative mood. So now that we've seen these two, it can also be used to express a supposition assumed as a fact. So if we are using a sentence to show that something which actually isn't true, we're just guessing that it is or assuming that it is, and we're using it as a fact, that would also come under the indicative mood of a verb. So let's say I say, if he waits, we will leave. So here, if is showing me that I'm assuming something, that if he waits, it's not really true since we're just assuming it to be true. So then waits would be in the indicative mood. Now we have to know that in the indicative mood, the verb can take any tense form. So whenever you see sentences that state a fact, or whether they ask a question, or when they're expressing something assumed as a fact, then we know that those verbs are in the indicative mood. Let's move on to the next mood that we have, which is the imperative mood. Imperative moods are used when we want to express commands, exhortations, requests, entreaties, and prayers. Let's look at them one by one. So first, when they want to express a command or an order, for example, if I have go away. So here the word go is the verb, and since it is giving me a command or an order to do something, I say that this is in the imperative mood. Now I can also use the imperative mood of a verb to show exhortation. Exhortation means when you want to urge somebody to do something. Let's use an example, be steady. So here I am not commanding the person to do something, but rather I am urging the person that it's important for them to do something, or trying to convince them that it's important for them to do it. So here be would be in my imperative mood. Very good. Now I can also use verbs to show an entreaty or a prayer. So entreaties are basically like requesting, but in a stronger way, or expressing something which is a prayer, and those sentences would be in the imperative mood as well. So let's take an example. Forgive me. So here we're not ordering anybody or commanding someone to forgive us, but we're more or less like asking them or requesting them, or asking for a prayer, have mercy, etc. All these types of sentences where have and forgive are said to be in the imperative mood. Now, whenever you have sentences that are in the imperative mood, you have to understand or remember that the subject that is implied in the sentence is you. Yes. And usually the subject you is not included in the sentence. So here I know that go away is pointing at you. So I'm saying that you go away, or you should go away. But I have deleted the subject you from the sentence because I want to express it as an imperative sentence and I want to use it as a command. So I remove the subject you, and I know that it is implied that I'm talking about you here. Now, how do you form imperative sentences? You need to remember that when you're using imperative sentences, you use the base form of the verb. That means if you have a to-do verb, you use it without the to, you just use the base form of the verb. For example, here we used go, which is the base form, be, also the base form, forgive, again the base form. Now usually when you talk about verbs, you say to forgive, to have, to be, to do, but you're just not using the to here. Instead, you're only using the base form of the verb. So we've now looked at the indicative mood and what they are. We've used the imperative mood and we've seen examples of that. Next, we'll be taking a look at the subjunctive mood. Let's start with the third type of mood that we have in English, which is the subjunctive mood. Now, the subjunctive mood is a little tricky, and nowadays writers try to avoid using it, but that doesn't mean it's not important and that it shouldn't be learned, because it might be used in many different places when it's required. So let's take a look at when we use the subjunctive mood. So subjunctive mood of a verb is used whenever we want to talk about an imaginary or a conditional situation. So these are just assuming that something is true or something imaginary is being talked about. So normally you would have sentences such as this. Let's just take a sentence to talk about the subjunctive mood. God blesses you, right? Now normally we say God blesses you. But if we want to change it to the subjunctive mood, where we're talking about an imaginary or a conditional situation, then we use a different form of the verb. We say God bless you. So here we are actually changing the normal form of the verb that we use, and we're using the base form of the verb, or bless. So this is then in the subjunctive mood. Let's take a look at the different types of sentences we have in the subjunctive mood. Now, we've broken it down to present subjunctive mood. So these are basically the verb moods that are in the present tense. We can use them to express a wish or a hope. So maybe I could say, God bless you, which basically is a wish, right? We are wishing for something, God bless you. And here we're using the present subjunctive mood of the verb bless. Now we could also use it in a noun clause, which is dependent on a verb that expresses something like desire, suggestion, intention, or resolution. Let's take an example to understand this. I suggest Mr. Gupta be appointed as chairman. So here I am saying that this is my opinion, this is my suggestion, and the verb is expressing this. The verb is suggest, which is expressing that it is my recommendation or suggestion that something happen. So here, instead of using another form of the verb be, I have used the base form of the verb be, and I have not changed it, even though I could say I want Mr. Gupta to be appointed as the chairman, or I hoped that Mr. Gupta would be appointed as the chairman. I want to suggest, I suggest Mr. Gupta be appointed. Rather than using a word like is, we use the verb be. Therefore, this sentence is in the subjunctive mood. Now, what are the forms of the verbs that we use in the present subjunctive mood? The verb to be will always remain be, even if you have I, we, you, he, she, they, etc. So regardless of the plurality or singularity or the person of your subject, you will always follow it up by be. And your verb will be in the base form, which is, for example, if you have speak, it will remain speak. So he speak, she speak. Although this sounds strange, with the construction of subjunctive sentences, this actually turns out to be right. So I, for example, I suggest he leave now. So here you can see that normally we'd follow he, which is a third person singular here. So we say he leaves, right? So you'd say I hope he leaves soon. You'd end that with an S. But in the subjunctive mood, we delete the S, or in some cases ES, and we just say he leaves soon. So we've used the simple present tense form of leave, and we've kept it in the base form. We have not added S or ES as we normally would. That's how you can tell that a sentence is in the subjunctive mood when you take a look at the subjunctive mood verb, and then you figure out whether it is matching or not with your subject that you have. So alright, we looked at your present subjunctive. Now we move on to your past subjunctive. Now similarly to how we had a different form of your be verb and how you used it in subjunctive mood in the present tense, we have the verb be, which is always turned to were in the past subjunctive mood. So if I have a sentence such as I wish he were here, or I wish they were here, or strangely enough, I wish I were there, or I was there, right? But here we are expressing a wish, and this is in the subjunctive mood. I wish I were, or maybe we can say taller than you. So here I'm expressing something which is imaginary or conditional. It's imaginary that I'm wishing that I was taller than you. Although we normally use I was, here we're using were regardless of what my subject is. So regardless of whether it's he, she, they, or you, we use were as the be form of the verb. So now when do we use past subjunctive? After the word wish, and this is used to express unreal or facts which are things which are contrary to facts. So let's take an example. I wish you were here. So I wish you were here. Again, we are using were instead of the be form of the verb. We also use the past subjunctive after if to show improbability or unreality. We also use it after as if or as though. Let's take an example. If you were here, I would be happy. So here I'm using if, and then again you can see you were. We are not using was like we normally would. We're rather using were because this is in the subjunctive mood. Very good. Now we can also use the subjunctive mood of a verb after would rather followed by the subject in order to show preference. Let's take a look at an example. I would rather you stay. So here, instead of saying I would rather that you had stayed, etc., we could say I would rather and then followed by the subject, and this would show me a preference for me for you to stay, right? So there we would have the past subjunctive mood. Now, whenever we were looking at the indicative mood, then we saw that we could use all the different types of tenses of the verb. But in the subjunctive mood, the tense of the imagined action that you have in the sentence, it does not change. So I could change the other verbs in the sentence, but I will not change the tense of the verb which is in the subjunctive mood. So let's take an example. If I have, I suggest Mr. Gupta be appointed as chairman, we have two verbs here. We have suggest, right? And we have the be verb. So the be verb is my subjunctive mood verb, right? So this will not change in its tense even if I change the tense of my other verb. So I could say, I will suggest Mr. Gupta be appointed as chairman. So then I could change this part to an ed in past tense, but my be would remain the same. So remember this, when you have a sentence in the subjunctive mood, you do not change the tense of the subjunctive mood verb, but the other verbs could undergo changes with tense. So now we've looked at the different types of moods. I hope you understood this video, and the next time you see a sentence, try to figure out what mood it's in. Thank you and bye-bye.